Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it is time to have a look at the battle racing changes when it comes to air, ground and naval which are coming. Now understand that these are the preliminary changes that we're going to be looking at and also can be discussed on the forums. So if you have any inputs when it comes to the BR changes, make sure to put them out there, make sure to go on the forums and discuss them and work out, what you think is correct or what you think is wrong. Also, there are some changes when it comes to the implementation of attackers and bombers and strike fighters in general at high tier, which thank God, that's all I can say, but we'll go through them as well. When it comes to these videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split them into two parts. So we'll have the aviation one, which will be this one, and then we'll have another one, which will be ground and naval. Since there's no game-changing things coming to ground and naval, I think it is worth just having a look at the BR changes. When it comes to the aviation stuff, we're going to go through the mechanics that they're changing, and also making it easier to stock grind these vehicles, which is absolutely fantastic. So let's get into the changes they're putting in, and then the BR changes. When it comes to top tier aviation, or at least high tier aviation, there's been a lot of changes happen over the last year or so. Generally, when we've had a look at it, you've got Air RBEC, you've got the addition of even more strike fighters, you've got the addition of even crazier missiles, and you've got the addition of changes to mechanics such as the flare and chaff and how they independently work compared to missiles, and also even the expansion of radars. So it's not really a surprise that with these changes come changes to the actual game mechanics or gameplay and how it works. When it comes to airfields, they are changing them and how the start of the battles are going to work. So, when it comes to the airfield stuff, this is what they're going to do. Historically, many gaming mechanics in War Thunder were originally created for World War II and early Cold War vehicles. For example, air respawn for bombers and strike aircraft. However, many late-period jet bombers and strike aircraft feature flight characteristics close to or even similar to those of jet fighters. In this case, we consider air respawn closer to ground targets as an unreasonable advantage for such aircraft, since their efficiency is obvious both for players and for gaming statistics. If later strike aviation is taking off and approaching targets together with fighters, their value for the team still remains the same. That's why we decided to revoke the air respawns for bombers and strike aircraft of rank 6 and 7 in air realistic battle modes. Currently, we see no need to adjust the battle ratings of these aircraft, but we will monitor your feedback and game statistics to quickly update the BRs of the top tier aircraft if they need it. Now, when it comes to this change, this is, by the way, an incredibly positive change, especially since strike fighters in general have been getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Obviously, we started off with the Su-7s, which were very fast but had limited use. You then had the Q-5s, which were also quite fast but also limited use when it came to their general playstyle. Then you had the Harriers, which took over the game for a long time. The Harrier GR1 implemented in a very broken state. And then you have stuff which is on top of that. So you have stuff like the A5C with its magics. You have the F105D, which was added, which is just a menace to deal with since it spawns in at Mach 1 in the air and can get to your airfield before even some people may have taken off if they spawned late. And then also, you had even more egregious stuff, such as the Viggen, the AJ-37. That thing was an absolute monster when it comes to the air, and especially since it gets a head start on a lot of vehicles that it fights. So with these changes, this is great. It also solves one of the issues I was talking about yesterday when it comes to supersonic bombers, which is if they spawn high in the air, nobody's going to catch them until they get to bases. But obviously, what this change also means is that bombers, specifically bombers, are going to take a huge hit when it comes to their efficiency, and the only thing that is going to save them is gameplay changes from the individual players. Hopefully this means that they'll match the repair costs now compared to what they were before, and hopefully that will help them out. But this overall is a really, really good change, and there'll still be vehicles which have insane acceleration that'll get to the fight first. Harriers, for example, still already have insane acceleration if you've ever actually taken one of those off. Same with stuff like Yak-38s, they do pretty well from the takeoff stance, so it just means that they can't just go above the enemy, smash them, and then the fighters come in and try and catch up. Instead of having this two-tier weird wave battle, you're going to have just a full force on against a full force. This is an incredibly positive change. Very, very happy to see this. They're also expanding on an idea which they added in, I believe it was last year or the year before, with stock missiles. Instead of the stock missiles being some of the worst that are about, they're actually improving them. So they say air combat at rank 7 in realistic battles intensively employs air-to-air missiles rather than guns, as it is in the lower ranks. Now, the majority of rank 7 fighters will come equipped with more advanced air-to-air missiles right after purchase. This will allow pilots to fight more confidently and be more valuable to the team even if their aircraft are not yet mastered. It is worth noting, however, that the weapon presets that include the advanced air-to-air missiles, if they're available from stock, still require the related modifications to be researched. And then they give a list of the ones which are coming in. So basically what this means is you'll get better missiles off the bat, but if you are looking to run a specific loadout, so maybe it's missiles and bombs, but you don't have the bombs unlocked or you don't have the missile modification unlocked, then you won't be able to run it. But your stock experience will be better. This is fantastic. This is good. You know, I don't know how else to put it. One of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue, when it comes to War Thunder is the stock grind of pretty much any vehicle in the game. There are still massive issues that need to be sorted out. I really hope that this idea gets taken into ground. So, where they've noticed that especially at high tiers, most people use APF-SDS, or pretty much all people, because it's the better round. Maybe they could make it so you get a small amount of APF-SDS when you move into the game, instead of just being stuck with just stock heat. Maybe they could do that, which would be on the same lines of this. Maybe they could reduce modification cost for parts and FPE when it comes to naval vehicles. Still hasn't happened yet, by the way. Just to let you know. But this change is very positive, and I'm very happy to see this. Any change that makes stock grinding easier, I'm going to be in favor of, because it just makes the general fun of the vehicle that much better. And we'll go through the different vehicles which will be getting this change. When it comes to the US, they're changing the F5E, F4E, and the F80. So the F5E is now going to be able to use 2 AIM-9Es stock instead of AIM-9Bs. The F4E will be able to use 2 AIM-9Es instead of AIM-9Bs, and the F8 Crusader will be able to use 2 AIM-9Es instead of AIM-9Bs as well. They obviously clarify about the mixed setups as well, just to make sure that people understand. So instead of, the 9Bs, you're just going to have 9Es to start with. This to me is a positive change. Germany is also getting a similar change. So the F4F, they're going from 9Bs to 9Es. The F4F Phantom Early is doing the same. Then the MiG-21F, it has a setup with 2 R3Rs without the need of research R3Rs being added. Now, obviously, the R3Rs aren't the greatest, but, at least it gets something. Then when it comes to the MiG-21 Bissau, the replacement of the 2 P3Cs is getting replaced by 2 R13M1s, which will be quite spicy, and the MiG-23MF is getting the same. So instead of starting with stock 2 R3Cs, I'm guessing it's supposed to be S's, at least I don't know what the R3C is, but they're getting replaced by the R13M1s. When it comes to the USSR, they're getting similar treatments. So the MiG-21 SMT, it's getting a set of 2 R3Rs. The MiG-21 BIS is getting a setup with two, the R3s are being replaced by the R13s, so similar to the German MiG-21s as well. The MiG-23M is getting the same, and also the MLD. So once again, they're just improving these stock missiles. The Jaguar GR1A for Britain, this is actually getting a setup with two AIM-9Gs. This is awesome. This is really nice to see, because that vehicle looks like a pain to stock grind, so giving it two AIM-9Gs, I'm very happy with. The Japanese, also on their Phantom, the F4EJ, they get access to two AIM-9Es instead of Bs, giving it a little bit more use. And then when it comes to the Chinese, they get some kind of crazy stuff. So the F104G Starfighter for the Chinese, it used to have stock AIM-9Bs. Now it's going to get itself two AIM-9Js of stock. That is very spicy and should be quite nice, especially because of the general playstyle of the F104G. The F5A also goes to AIM-9Es from AIM-9Bs, and the J7E goes from PL2s to PL5Bs. So once again, very, very positive in that regard. China is one of the biggest beneficiaries of this. Same with actually the French as well. So the Mirage 3C and E, they get an additional setup to start with, which is two M9Bs and one Matra R530. If you haven't used the R530, by the way, I think it might be my favorite missile to use in the game, just because of its long-range nature. A lot of people don't expect it, and you launch it from about 4 or 5 kilometers away, so it's outside of the general distance that people find you at, and it's just super fun to use when it hits. It's just really nice, fantastic missile to use. And then the Mirage 5F, the setup with the two Matra R550 Magic 1s without the need to research the R550s. So now the Mirage 5F gets two Magics stock, which will be super nice. But also, AIM-9Bs will be removed from the weapons nomenclature, so they're going to remove them from the game for them. Sweden also, with its top tier stuff, the J35D Draken will get two RB-24Js instead of RB-24s, so it'll get much better missiles at stock. And then the Jagdviggen and the Viggen, so the JA-37 and the AJ-37, both get the same treatment. So they also get the two RB-24Js instead of two RB-24 stock. Very, very good to hear. And then Israel, the Mirage 3CJ, it gets a similar setup to the Mirage 3 from France, but instead of the AIM-9Bs, it gets the Chaffrier 2s, which are basically just AIM-9Bs, at least functionality-wise, when it comes to the game and how they work. So it gets Chaffrier 2s and the Matra R530. The Nesha will get the AIM-9Ds, so we'll get two of them to start with, and the Kafir C7 will also get two AIM-9D stock as well. All of these changes are fantastic. I'm really, really happy to see them. So when it comes to the BR changes themselves, there's a ton of them for Aviation once again. Aviation seems to be the game mode where they are really pushing around a lot of BRs. And especially after these economy changes, there are a lot more drastic BR changes than before. You've also got to remember, this is the first time we've had a bunch of BR changes in quite a while, actually a decent amount of months' time. So there's going to be ones in here which are a lot more, well, larger than you would generally be used to. One of the things to also note is the way that I'm going to be showing it on the screen is the BR changes on the left will be the arcade ones, and the ones on the right will be realistic. We'll be talking about the realistic ones since that is the major game mode that I play, and it'll be easier to do. So, the first BR change is the TBD one, going from 1.3 to 1.0. We've talked about the fall from grace of the TBD one before. It is no surprise that it keeps continuing to go down. It is a strike aircraft or ground pounder which can't effectively ground pound. Just like a lot of other vehicles around its BR, the Ju-87s are probably the most prime example for this. They just keep going down in BR because the bombers and those BRs are just way better than them, and they just get annihilated by the fighters. They do not have the offensive armament of stuff like the AD2 82, 84, or AM1 to be able to make up for their shortcomings, and this will continue to happen as it does. But these, well, the TBD at least is now at the lowest BR it can be, so it will at least perform the best that it can do, which is still not very good. The V156B1 is getting exactly the same treatment. It's going from 1.3 to 1.0, so there you go. The same reasoning as the TBD1. It's not a surprise that these vehicles keep going down. One change that I'm kind of surprised at is they're actually bumping up the C200s, so the Italian one and also the German one, the Series 3. The Series 3 is going from 1.7 to 2.0 in both cases. Remember, Germany used to have a lot of Italian vehicles in it, so it's not surprised to see both of them go up at the same time. But for me, the C200s have always been vehicles which have really struggled with their armament. They don't have a lot of ammunition, and the armament itself doesn't do a ton of damage. But then again, they did recently buff the Breda Safed, so maybe with that change, maybe that means that they increase. But I've never seen them as good vehicles because of the offensive weaponry, and also the engine can be very temperamental, meaning that it loves to overheat, and management of it can take a while. The HE111H3 goes up in BR. Not too much of a surprise. It's got a really nice bomb load, and also with the air-spawn, it can be really hard to catch at 1.7, especially if the matchmaking tends to be 1.3 to 2.3, so seeing it go up, no real surprise there. Medium bombers and heavy bombers really dominate the lower tiers. The Ju-88s have always been very powerful, and so have the Heinkels. The SPD-3 also goes up to 2.0 from 1.7. This is more of a surprise for the Dauntless. I thought that thing would fall in the same category as stuff like the TVD, just going down in BR over and over again, just because it doesn't have the best offensive armament, but maybe it's doing well in naval. Maybe that's the reason why it's going up. I don't really know why, unless they've made a change to it that I'm not aware of. The Farman goes from 1.7 to 2.3. No surprise here. We've talked about the Farman for many years. If you don't know what the Farman is, it's the F222.2. It is a mail carrying aircraft for the French, which can carry thousands of 50-kilo bombs. There was a time in War Thunder's history where you could, if you had 2 Farmans, you could win the game within 5 minutes of it existing. Nowadays, it's probably a little bit harder to do, but you could still do it kind of crazy. The Farman is insanely good. It gets a really high air spawn, so nothing can catch it, and all you have to do is just go bomb bases with it. It's a stupidly easy aircraft to fly, and to see it go up in BR is not a surprise at all. The Ki 43 Co for the Chinese is going up in BR from 2.3 to 2.7. The Ki 43-2 for the US and the Japanese is going from 2.0 to 2.3, and the Ki 43-1 is going from 1.7 to 2.0. This would indicate that all of these vehicles have obviously been performing pretty well. The Ki 43s are fantastic turn fighters, and with metas becoming way more aggressive and way more bees nesty, where people just fight in the center of the map, Ki 43s are going to be those vehicles which heavily benefit from this. Their only real downside as vehicles is the armament, and because of that fact, it can be a real problem to actually fight them. So not too much of a surprise that they're going up, especially since it's very meta dependent. As more energy fighters get pushed down, the turn fighters would probably struggle if people play them properly, but not too much of a surprise to see that. The I-153M62s go up in BR, the Soviet one and the Chinese one. This is very surprising that these vehicles are going to 2.3. You can dance around them quite easily, but I suppose what we've seen a lot of over the last year or so is a real fact that turn fighting seems to be the flavor of the year, or even the flavor of the last few years. If stuff like the Chaikas are going up to 2.3, that's basically what's going on. Same with the I-16. The I-16 Type 18 going up to 2.3 definitely means that turn fighting is the way to go, since that thing, it's stupidly easy to play around. If you're generally, playing against that vehicle. The Hurricane Mark IV is going up to 2.3 as well. That's the Hurricane with the big guns on it. That one's really fun to play, by the way. It's one of those that once you hit connections on it, it just feels really, really lovely. And the Reggiani 2000 Series 1 and the GA are also going up in BR. I always thought they were kind of under-tiered, just because their engine feels really nice to use. So to see them go up is not really a surprise. The Potes 630 going up from 2.0 to 2.3, that is a surprise to me, though. The 630 as a vehicle has some really big problems with it. Its main issue is its engines. They overheat really easily, and also they generally don't like existing. But the fact that it has a very limited armament as well, only 220mm Hispanos, which means that it isn't that useful in ground, not that useful in naval, when France gets naval at some point. But in air realistic, I wouldn't rate this plane at all. So really, really surprising to see this vehicle go up. I wonder if there's just some BR decompression going on here, with obviously the push to 11.3 for jets. Maybe what they're doing is they're spreading out the low tiers, because some of these changes are a little bit off the wall. The C202s are increasing in BR once again. They're going from 2.3 to 2.7. This includes the German one, the Italian one, and the C202D. All of these are fantastic vehicles. They're actually some vehicles I point to when people ask me, what's a good starter vehicle, or what's a good vehicle to try and learn how to play air realistic. The C202 is one of the ones I go to because it's kind of a jack of all trades. It can play any playstyle that you want, so it more depends on what your enemy is good at, and then you can kind of counter it with the opposite style of play. So it's a really good training aircraft to learn the beginnings of air realistic. Same with the BF-109E1. That's another one which is fantastic for it. So these vehicles going up in BR, no surprise to me. The Ki 44-2 Otsu is also going to 2.7. It's a fantastic vehicle. It has pretty much everything good on it. The armament is temperamental, but to be honest with you, a lot of vehicles around this BR have a temperamental armament, so not too much of a surprise. The Beaufighter Mark 1 40mm, the Battle Pass vehicle, is going from 3.0 to 2.7. That vehicle looks jank. I haven't used it in an official match, but it just looks jank as all hell. I don't know how else to put it. I can understand why people would struggle to use it, especially since a lot of the larger cannon machines, which don't really have anything else to offer, have gone down in BR in recent years. The Ki 61 Co is going from 2.7 to 3.0. The flight performance of the Ki 61 Co has always been fantastic, and it's always meant that you could be put in a dominant position compared to before. So I'm completely happy with it going up in BR. Same with the Reggianis, the 2001 CB, the Series 1, and the Gruppo 22 are all going up to 2.7. These actually have really good multi-role use. They're very good in not just realistic, but they're also good in ground realistic and naval as well. So the bomb that they have is really, really good. The only issue with them is you got to watch out for the engine, but everything else works really well. Golovachev's Yak-9M is actually going up in BR. I love the Yak-9M just because of the name. Good old Golovachev's. I need to get access to that vehicle. I haven't ever bought it, so I need to find it. At the same time, I have not really a lot of experience in it, so I can't comment on it. The I-16 Type 28 and Type 27 are also going up in BR, leading me to believe that once again, term fighters are doing really, really well in this meta. Pretty much all of the vehicles that are going up in BR, apart from the Hurricane Mark IV from earlier, are vehicles which are really good turn fighters or really good hybrid fighters, so at low altitude. So no surprise to see any of these things happen, really. The 2001 CN Reggiani goes up in BR as well, another vehicle which is great at the multi-role idea and also has a really good bomb drop. The Ki 61 Otsu is going from 3.0 to 3.3. This is more of a surprise to me. Obviously the Co has pretty good flight characteristics, but they kind of get worse as they go up when it comes to the Ki 61s. The Key 61B and also the Key 61 Otsu are also going up for America and China, so they're keeping them all in line with each other. The Key 44-2 high is going from 2.7 to 3.3, not just the Japanese one, but also the Chinese one. So yeah, once again, these fighters, which are way more orientated around turn fighting, are being pushed up and up and up and up in BR, which is really not too much of a surprise. The B-18B is going from 3.0 to 3.3. That thing's a monster. If you've ever used the B-18s or the T-18s, you know how good they can be in not just hitting ground targets, but also being very good support fighters in the twin engine roles. It's no wonder a surprise they keep increasing in BR. But one of the ones which is surprising is the B-34, which is going from 3.0 to 3.3. I think this is more because it's being used as a vehicle to go after other bombers, because it actually has a pretty insane offensive armament. Kind of surprised people don't use the B-25 more for that as well, just as a pseudo bomber hunter. But yeah, the B-34 can do everything well, it's just a bit lumpy while it does it, so that's why I'm kind of surprised it's going up in BR. It also doesn't have the best bomb load as well, especially compared to other vehicles around its BR. The Do 217, N1 and N2, the night fighters, they go down in BR once again. I've spaded them more recently than a lot of these other vehicles. They feel awful. I don't know how else to put it. They just don't feel good at all. They feel heavy. Their main purpose, which is obviously night fighting, even with the Shrug music, isn't in the game. Their radar is very limited. Their general usability is just so dependent on your team. It is just not worth it. They're not good vehicles. They don't feel nice to play. The only thing that they have going for them is the amount of ammunition that's on board, and that doesn't really save you. The P-51 is going down in BR once again, going from 3.7 to 3.3. I don't understand this unless people are playing it wrong. The P-51 is a completely fine aircraft. It works really well. All variants of it feel really nice to play. So it going down in BR is a sad sign. It's a decent multi-role aircraft. It does everything well. So very, very surprising to see that. The ME-410B2U4, on the other hand, is awful. So to see that go down is not too much of a surprise. It has a very defined role in the game, and that defined role has never really been one which has ever been exemplified when it comes to the matchmaking of the game. So it's not ever a surprise to me whenever certain ME-410s go down in BR, because they just don't fit in the game very well. The J-22B is actually going down in BR, so I'm guessing it just went up a few too many times. It's actually going down again to 3.7 after being at 4.0. And the J-22B and the J-22A and a lot of the Swedish propeller aircraft are fantastic vehicles, which is why they kept going up in BR over and over and over again. But also at the same time, you got to remember that eventually vehicles will hit their limit when it comes to the BR increases, and it looks like that's what happened to the J-22B. It finally got to a point where it was outmatched, so it has to go down again. The Yak-9K has gone from 3.7 to 4.0. It has actually got a lot more use since they added armored target belts to the 45mm, so that is my guess why it's gone up in BR, so it can be more used in naval and also ground, which make it a little bit nicer to play. It also means that it could be more useful in aerialistic because it could ground pound as well, so kind of interesting to see that go up after that change. The ITPM-1 is going up in BR, thank God. The TISMAR is also massively going up in BR. So the ITPM-1 is going from 3.7 to 4.0. If you've used the ITP, you will be so surprised. Now the vehicle itself has sat at 3.7 for the longest time. It makes no sense being at 3.7. It makes much more sense being at 4.0 to 4.3, basically because of the fact that it has access to that 37mm. That can cause a lot of damage. It also has independent bomb drops, so in ground realistic, this thing is just a menace. And then the TISMAR being at 3.7 was even more of a joke, because it actually had great power from the engines as well. So to see the TISMAR going from 3.7 to 4.3, both of these changes highly, highly recommended and very nice to see. I can't stress enough how much this is good. The Key 100 is also going up in BR from 3.7 to 4.0. This one is more of a surprise to me because of the fact that I've always found the Key 100 to be quite sluggish in turns, and loses a lot of energy compared to a lot of the other Japanese aircraft, but I'm guessing it must be performing quite well. The C205 Series 3 has the same issue where it's just quite heavy, but that thing's going up in BR as well, so the guns must be doing it justice. Never really surprised when Italian vehicles go up in BR when it comes to their aircraft, because they are very, very good. There aren't many propeller aircraft for Italy which aren't worth playing. They're all fantastic vehicles, even a lot of the bombers. The A6M3 is going from 4.3 to 4.7. People have got to stop turn fighting it. The MB162 is going from 4.3 to 4.7. This is not a surprise either. The large bombers are mid-tiers. Basically, they get a really high air spawn, so they just gallivant off into the atmosphere and then bomb stuff and then disappear. So that's just what happens with those vehicles. It's the same reason why I stuffed the ME264, the HE177, the JU288, even the B-17s back in the day. They just kept going up in BR because that's how people play them. You know, no matter how many times people complain to me about the repair costs of them or complain about getting shot down too easily in them, you just gotta mimic what other people do in them. And it's just spawn, turn a little bit, set it in a 5-degree increase in altitude, leave for 10 minutes, come back, play the game. That's how you do it. You know, it's really not rocket science. The VB1002 is going from 4.3 to 4.7. This vehicle is one of my favorite in the French tree, mainly because it's different and also has a crazy armament on it. It's just a really interesting layout with the tandem engine setup. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it does have crazy power with the engines. It's just a large target and it can get hit pretty easily. Surprised to see it go up in BR, not gonna lie. That's definitely a surprise to me, but maybe there's something going on which I don't know about. They're also decreasing the F4U4 from 5.0 to 4.7. Now, the F4Us are always such odd vehicles to me because a lot of them take a while to get going in Air Realistic. What I mean by this is their setup takes patience, and patience is not something which has been regarded as a good thing, it seems, over the last few years in War Thunder. Many people want to get to the action as quick as possible, but in order for the Corsairs to be truly efficient when it comes to playing the game, one of the things that has to be observed is their need for altitude and their need for energy. And in those situations which are fast and getting into the battle as fast as you can, that is not something which is used a lot by people. So whenever I see a Corsair go down, all I can think of is there's people playing it wrong. And that might be the case. There's probably a case with a lot of these vehicles. A lot of them, it's just people using weird playstyles or trying different things to make them work. But in the meta right now, energy fighters or boom and zoom fighters have a really nice place because a lot of them got lowered in BR and they'll feel really nice to play, but for some reason some of them are still going down. The SU-6 M71F is also going down in BR. Not too much of a surprise. It's probably getting caught up with a lot of the other strike fighters at those BRs. You know, at 5.0, you're very close to the 82s, 84s, AM1s of the world. The Wyvern, even, you can see, even though that keeps going down in BR. So you got to be real careful with the SU-6, even against stuff like AB410s, because you will run into them quite a lot, and that means that it can't do its primary role. The Reggiani 2005 goes up in BR again. I never really understood why it got decreased in BR at all. It was a fantastic vehicle and has been a fantastic vehicle for the longest time. And I knew once they added it to a game, it was going to cause problems because it's a wonder Italian vehicle. You know, it's one of those which is like, yes, this will win the war. All of that good stuff. It was insanely powerful in its prototype form. and in general, so to see it do as well in the game is no surprise to me at all. The J5N1 though, that going up in BR, that is a surprise to me. Because the way that I describe the J5N1, because if you go to my stat card and you look at my stats in it, I've actually done pretty well in the machine. You know, my general KD is pretty good. I think my win rate overall is pretty good with it. But I really disliked playing it. I don't know what it was about it, but it didn't feel nice to play at all. I always felt like I was one step behind the curve with it. But it does have a really good armament. It does have pretty decent engines, but it just didn't feel nice to play. And it is a feeling, you know, when it comes to these things. Like, I definitely preferred playing the Key 83 compared to the J5, even though the Key 83 has overheating issues. It just felt nicer to play. And sometimes when it comes to these vehicles, you can only really put your feelings down to, well, feelings. And for me, the J5 didn't feel good, even though I did well in it. The TU1 is going down in BR from 5.7 to 5.3. Not a surprise. It's a vehicle that was added to the game and then forgotten the next day. I feel like it's one of those which has a very high potential ceiling, but has the issue with not being the only vehicle that is in the air. If it was allowed to do what it wants, it has a very high ceiling of success, but it can't most of the time, so it's not going to. The other thing is there's much better Soviet grinders which are around the place, so it's kind of hard to justify picking it up. The F89D is going down to 7.3. No, don't do this. This is silly. The F89D is one of those vehicles that you can play around quite easily when it comes to it, but there is no reason for it to go down in BR. Its general flight characteristics and flight performance is very good, and there is a reason why America at rank 5 is one of the most popular nations in the game, because they have some insanely good vehicles and will continue to do so. None of them need to go down in BR. Enough of them have gone down in BR already and annihilated the matchmaker. Don't put this one down too to cause a ruckus as well. The Key 200 is going up in BR. When I played the Key 200, I understand why it keeps going up in BR. Same with the ME163s. People engage it when they don't need to. Because of the nature of jets in general, a lot of the matches are drive to the center of the map, have a bit of a Barney, and then whoever survives wins. And the problem with that is that hugely favors certain vehicles like turn fighters, which is why the Yak-23 kept going up as well, and the Key 200 and the ME163s are vehicles which hugely benefit from the way of that play. And when I played it, I saw it in action. I saw MiG-15s, I saw Sabres, I saw all of these trying to turn fight me at the start of the battle when I was, you know, as efficient as I could be in the plane, and I just annihilated them because they can't do anything against you. So yeah, it's a really unfortunate situation where it is a learn to play issue. I think is probably the way to put it. People need to learn how to fight the Key 200. And it's not hard to do. It's super simple to do. You isolate it and you run it out of fuel. You know, it can't go as fast as you in most situations, especially at 83 or 87 with a lot of the vehicles you face. And also, one thing has to be noted, there needs to be an exception put into the ME163 and the Key 200. They shouldn't be allowed to get on EC maps in Aerialistic, because they are literally useless. They can't do anything on those maps, so that is one stipulation I would put into them if you want to do this BR change. So that would actually benefit them a lot, because it means that they can have the playstyle that they want to play. On the EC maps, they're completely and utterly useless. But that is the BR changes for Aviation for February of 2022. No high tier ones this time, but maybe they are waiting to see what's going to go on when it comes to the changes that they're implementing to the missiles and also implementing to the airfields. So I'm completely fine with that. You know, if they want to see where the stones land and then manipulate them from there, that's completely fine to me. It'll be a really, really crazy meta-shifting time when it comes to War Thunder for jets, so it's really cool to see. A lot of BRD compression on the mid-tiers here, which is quite nice. Obviously, the general trends are once again favouring turn fighters over energy fighters, so that hasn't changed from over the last year. Maybe at some point we'll have some energy fighting chads who will come out and blitz to actually put these turn fighters back in their place. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orangetail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Bareen, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.